Welcome everybody to a look at two new 4K steelbooks. So we've already looked at a film from Quentin Tarantino, both of which these are also directed by, in the form of Jackie Brown, and we also have Kill Bill Volume 1 and Volume 2, also in the same 4K steelbook format that Jackie Brown was. So yeah, the first film obviously is Kill Bill Volume 1. So just like with Jackie Brown, comes with a slipcover that comes off, which is nicely done. Keeps the steelbook protected, but also looks pretty good in its own right as well. As does the reverse, which just like with Jackie Brown, doesn't come with any of the copyright nonsense on the back because it's all on the slipcover itself. So yeah, that's all great. And yeah, both films are martial arts action films. And both films also star the likes of Uma Thurman, who was also in the likes of Pulp Fiction and Gattaca. It also stars David Carradine, who was in Death Race 2000, The Long Riders, and Cannonball. Daryl Hannah, who was in Blade Runner. And Gordon Lai Chai-Hu stars in this film as two different characters. So in the first film, he stars as Johnny Mao, and the second film he stars as Pai Mei. And yeah, I've seen him in 12 other films. He's a really rather prolific action star in the 70s and 80s. In the likes of the 36th Chamber of Shaolin and Heroes of the East. So the first film was released in 2023, clocks in at 111 minutes long. Also stars the likes of Lucy Liu, who's in three of the Kung Fu Panda films, Strange World, which I find to be highly underrated as far as animated films go, and Charlie's Angels. Also stars Vivica A. Fox, who was in Independence Day, and finally Sonny Chiba, who was in the Street Fighter films, The Bullet Train, and Legend of the Eight Samurai. So, an assassin is shot by her ruthless employer Bill and other members of their assassination circle, but she lives to plot her vengeance. So the cast, soundtrack, cinematography, action scenes, violence, plot, script, production, and pacing are all practically flawless. Now, sure, I could nitpick in a couple of areas, chiefly among in which is the narrative structure, which in of itself isn't a problem, but it does reveal before the actual events happen that a certain character dies via this death list that our lead star, Uma Thurman's character, has. And yeah, that basically just deflates all tension that happens in that scene because it's a fantastic scene. There's a lot of violence, there's a lot of great action choreography on the go, and yeah, it's all really well done. But you ultimately know the end of how it's gonna conclude, and yeah, that's just a little bit disappointing. And yeah, it's a problem. Also, also a problem when it comes to how it concludes. Obviously, it doesn't conclude properly because there is obviously a second film, and it's a problem with the second film as well. Is I feel like they both could have been just one whole film rather than two separate pieces. So yeah, but still, it's a great film in its own right, and yeah, it's one of my favorites from Quentin Tarantino. It's just a shame that he didn't get it out as a complete picture, quite frankly. So yeah, but you do have the discs that are nicely printed there, 4K at the front, Blu-ray at the back, and yeah, on the disc itself, in terms of extras, we've got the 4K has the movie and the special features, by the way, so does the Blu-ray. And on the extras, we have the making of Kill Bill Volume 1, then we have the 5, 6, 7, 8 bonus musical performances. So they're singing in the club that Lucy Liu is also in, that Uma Thurman goes into to take her out. And then we've got Tarantino trailers, we've got Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown, and Kill Bill Volume 1 teaser. And then we have the Kill Bill Volume 1 bootleg trailer, and then the Kill Bill Volume 2 teaser as well. So nothing major in terms of the extras there, but still, it's a great looking film in terms of the 4K and the sound. And yeah, it's well worth watching as far as the film itself goes in its own right. And then we have the second film, which was released 6 months after this one, so in 2004, and it clocks in at 137 minutes long. So the bride continues a campaign of revenge against the deadly Viper assassination squad until there's nothing left to do but kill Bill. So yeah, and again, slips off nicely. I like the choice of colours and such with these. And then got the reverse. So alongside the cast that I've already mentioned, we also have Michael Madsen in this. Now you do see him briefly in the first film in a flashback, but he does have a more fleshed out role in this film. So he was also in Reservoir Dogs, Thelma and Louise, and the worst of the James Bond films, Die Another Day, although not really because of him. So although there are plenty of aspects to the second part of the Kill Bill story to like, it is sadly let down by inferior pacing and a more meandering plot than what the first part had to offer. All the while, I feel this could have been condensed down enough to be added to the original film to make one wholly satisfying effort. I definitely feel like this has been padded out. There's no reason for this to be more than 2 hours long. Um, and at the end of the day, I do feel like there's a good hour, maybe an hour 10, 20 here that could have just been added to the first film to make, a 3 hour ish epic. And unfortunately, that is not the case. So, yeah, it does feel like this film has been made to justify it being a second part. Now, granted, I do believe that these were made back to back. It was originally intended to be a full film, but yeah, I still feel like you could have just cut this down to an hour and a bit and just added it onto this first film to make one whole great film. As yeah, it would have made the first film more satisfying in terms of the way it concludes, and then you wouldn't have had elements to this film that just don't feel necessary, like Michael Madsen going to work, for instance. It just doesn't feel necessary. And I know they gave Lucy Liu's character a backstory in the first film, but that was really good in terms of the way that was done. It was inventive. It had it was done in an anime style, so it helped set it apart from the style of the rest of the film. But with the backstory of Daryl Hannah's character in this, as well as Uma Thurman's character, it's done in a homage kind of way to the Hong Kong action films of the 70s, but it doesn't quite go far enough in that regard. So their backstory elements just don't feel wholly necessary, and certainly don't help set themselves apart from the rest of the film, like the way that they did with Lucy Liu's character. So yeah, those elements just feel padded out, and at the end of the day, it only really feels like we're getting a backstory to Uma Thurman's character, so we know how she can punch so close to the coffin that she's ended up buried in at some point. So yeah, that just feels padded out. And yeah, the final fight scene with Bill, decent enough, but nowhere near as good as the fight scene with Daryl Hannah, and certainly doesn't compare to the fight scene with Lucy Liu and her bodyguards in the first film. So yeah, not quite as great in that regard. That said, the cast, the production, the cinematography, soundtrack, script, and several large chunks of the plot are really rather great. But like I said, I just think it really outstays its welcome. And while the action though is solid, it is also not quite as impressive as before. So that's why it makes me feel like this should have been just a whole thing. It feels kind of disjointed in a lot of ways. It feels like the fight scene with Lucy Liu should have been somewhere in the middle of these films, and the other fight scene somewhere near the beginning, because it has to have a bit of a build up. Whereas with the fight scene with Lucy Liu and her bodyguards, that feels like a final action scene because it's so epic in terms of the body count, the violence, the choreography between when they're fighting each other and such. That feels, like a final action scene, whereas, it isn't when in the grand scheme with both of these films together. So, yeah, but still, nice enough looking steelbook. And again, the 4K and in terms of sound quality and picture is great. We haven't had these on 4K before, just like we haven't had Jackie Brown on 4K before. So it's nice to finally have them. Um, Despite my issues with this film, though, it still gets a 4 out of 5, but the first film gets 4.5 out of 5, as even though it doesn't have, a concrete conclusion to its story, and there is a little bit of issues with the narrative structure, it's just a much more enjoyable effort, and comes together in a more cohesive manner. So yeah, but still overall, really rather enjoyable films, and I'm glad to finally own them both together. As like I said, I haven't owned them before, even on Blu-ray, and yeah, now it's finally on both on 4K, which is really really great to see. So yeah, we've already had obviously Jackie Brown on 4K this year, so free in the space of a week from Quentin Tarantino, but then also out of video and released Inglourious Basterds on 4K as well. So we had four of his films on 4K this year. So yeah, hopefully we get the likes of Death Proof on 4K. That'd be great to get on 4K, as I feel that is another highly underrated Tarantino effort. I'm not sure if Reservoir Dogs is on 4K. I know Pulp Fiction is. I don't think I've gotten that yet though. Or might have. Just checking. Yeah, I do have it on 4K. I also have that on Steelbook as well. But yeah, still, it's great to have so many of his films now on in my collection, but also on 4K. And I do highly recommend getting them, despite my issues with the films, as they are well worth seeing. And yeah, hopefully one day I will get to see them at the cinema, because that's one thing I'd really like to do, is see all of Tarantino's films that I never got the chance to see when they came out on the big screen. And yeah, they'd be well worth seeing, because they are, at the end of the day, really, really rather fun. It's just a shame, really, that the Kill Bill, the Whole Bloody Affair release, which is both films just joined together in the more than 4 hours that they come to in total, has yet to have a Blu-ray release, or even, a wide release at all. I know it's on DVD in some form, but yeah, no Blu-ray, no 4K, and it's just a real shame that we haven't had the whole thing in one conjoined film. But yeah, that's just another thing entirely, quite frankly. But if it does come out in that form, I would highly recommend getting it, because I imagine it will be great, and I would get it myself. But still, if you have seen either of these films, I'd like to hear your thoughts on them. But nonetheless, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.